My name is Laura Thompson, and I'm a 42-year-old single mom living in a quiet suburb of Milwaukee. I have one son, Ethan. He's 17, smart, observant, and more grown-up than I like to admit. Since his father left when Ethan was just 5, it's been just the two of us. I tried to give him everything I could: stability, love, consistency, but the truth is, there were moments when I barely held it all together. I kept my struggles hidden, wore a smile that sometimes felt too heavy, and lived day to day with a heart full of worry and a home full of love. For the most part, Ethan and I had a close bond. We had our routines, inside jokes, Friday night movie marathons, and pancake Saturdays. He was never a difficult kid. Sure, he had his moods and attitude like any teen, but he never gave me real trouble. That's why what happened that night was so unexpected, so jarring, and yet, somehow, so revealing. It was a cold Thursday evening in February. I had just come back from a long shift at the diner where I worked as a waitress. I was exhausted. My feet ached, my shoulders were tense, and the only thing I wanted was a hot bath and a moment of silence. Ethan was in his room, supposedly finishing his English project. I had texted him earlier reminding him not to stay up late. He didn't respond, which wasn't unusual. Teenagers and their phones. Unless it's something they want, they're suddenly unreachable. I ran the bath, added some lavender oil and Epsom salt, and let the water rise. I peeled off my clothes, tossed them in the hamper, and wrapped myself in my worn robe, heading to the bathroom with a glass of red wine in one hand and my phone in the other. I lit a couple of candles and sank into the hot water, closing my eyes for what felt like the first time all day. Maybe I stayed in there longer than I realized. Maybe the combination of the warm water and the wine made me lose track of time. I was singing quietly to myself some soft, familiar tune from the radio, when I heard a sudden creak at the door. My eyes flew open, and before I could say a word, the door opened wider. There, in the dim candlelight, stood Ethan. He froze. His face went pale. His eyes wide, filled with confusion, maybe a little embarrassment, maybe even guilt. But also something else, concern. I instinctively reached for my towel, covering myself under the water, but I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I didn't slam the door. Instead, I looked at him and said softly, "Hey, it's okay." "What's wrong?" He stammered. I didn't know you were in here. I thought you were still in your room. I needed to talk to you." His voice trembled, and it was then I realized something was very wrong. I waved him in, gently. "Close the door behind you. Sit." "What happened?" He hesitated, but slowly closed the door and sat down on the toilet seat, facing away from me out of respect. His shoulders hunched, and I could see his fingers trembling. Whatever had brought him here like this wasn't just about walking in on his mom in the bath. This was deeper. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to walk in like that." "I know," I replied. "But talk to me. What's going on?" There was silence for a moment, heavy like thick fog. And then he finally spoke. "It's about school," he said. "About everything, really. I feel like I'm drowning, Mom. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't think I can handle everything." My heart clenched. I leaned forward, still careful with the towel around me, and said, "Ethan, sweetheart, what do you mean?" "I got a letter from the school today," he said. "I didn't want to show you. My GPA dropped. I failed the last math test. And I've been skipping gym. I've been getting these awful headaches, and I can't focus. I thought I could keep it together, but it's like no matter how hard I try, I keep messing up. I didn't want to disappoint you." Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. "Ethan, you could never disappoint me. Never. I saw you working so hard, Mom. You come home late every night. You never complain. You still make time for me. I thought I had to be strong too. I thought if I showed you I was falling apart, you'd feel like a failure." I couldn't take it anymore. I stood, pulled my robe tightly around me, and stepped out of the tub, water dripping on the floor. I knelt in front of him and took his hands in mine. "Ethan," I said, "you don't ever have to hide from me. You're my son. I don't expect you to be perfect. I expect you to be human. And humans struggle. That's not weakness, that's life. He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. His cheeks were red, his expression raw. "But I didn't want you to see me like this." "And yet," I said softly, "you walked in on me at one of my most vulnerable moments. And I didn't push you away. Do you know why?" He shook his head. "Because you're my child, and if you can't come to me when the world is too much, then I've failed in giving you the kind of home I promised. I allowed you to see me, all of me, because there's nothing in this world I'm more proud of than being your mother, flaws and all." He broke down then, crying into my shoulder as I held him tightly, both of us kneeling there on the bathroom floor, candles flickering in the background. It didn't matter that the moment had started awkwardly. It didn't matter that I was in a bathrobe or that he was overwhelmed by school. What mattered was that we found each other again, in our vulnerability. That night, after he calmed down, I made us both tea, and we sat on the couch with a blanket between us. He opened up about more than I ever expected. The pressures of his upcoming SATs, the bullying he didn't want to mention before, the late-night anxiety attacks he was too ashamed to tell me about. I listened, and when he was done, I told him everything too. How I sometimes cried in the bathroom at work. How I felt like I was falling behind on the bills. How I missed the version of myself that used to laugh more. I told him I wasn't perfect and never pretended to be. And in that moment, I saw the weight lift off his shoulders. Because now, we were both real. No masks. No pretending. Over the next few weeks, we made some changes. I set up a meeting with his school counselor. He started seeing a therapist. I took a weekend off, the first in months, and we went hiking, just the two of us, no phones, just nature and healing. Slowly, Ethan began to smile again. He laughed more, he opened up. He studied, but without the crushing weight of expectation. And I started sleeping better at night, knowing he wasn't bottling everything up anymore. Sometimes life brings us to our knees in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes being seen in our most vulnerable state isn't the worst thing. Sometimes that's exactly what we need to show our children, that it's okay to not be okay. Ethan didn't walk in on me that night because of curiosity or accident. Something deeper drove him there. And I'm grateful he did, because it gave me the chance to show him what love really looks like, not in perfection, but in presence. Not in strength, but in honesty. My son was shocked when he saw me that night, raw and unguarded. But I allowed him to stay, not because I didn't care, but because I cared so much. And in allowing him to see me, I gave him permission to be seen too. That night changed us. Not because of what was seen, but because of what was shared. And if that's what it took to remind both of us that vulnerability isn't weakness,